I'd hoped a familiar adversary might make the transition a little easier.
As much as I would like my high school knees back, I don't think that's going to quite make up for things.
And what things would that be?
I gave up most of my life for this agency. And apparently my actual life. But for what? NCIS is gone. And now my children have lost both of their parents.
Very, very sadly, Vance is dead. What can you say about, like, why? Was this your choice? Was it the show's?
No, it was not my choice. I found out because the executive producer, Steve Binder, came to my trailer one day and said, "We've got a great idea for the 500th episode." I said, "Really? I'm all ears. Tell me all about it." He said, "Well, the agency, NCIS as we know it, is in deep peril and is in danger of becoming extinct, of folding over into another agency because there's a nefarious character sort of working behind the scenes to sabotage the agency. And director Vance figures out who it is, and in the process of saving the agency, he loses his life. It's a great story. You want to hear more?" And I thought, wait, let's go back a minute. Back up to the part where you say in saving the agency, he loses his life. So it was basically presented to me that the studio and the network wanted to do something really spectacular, really big, and something that would really send shockwaves through our, through the NCIS fan base and the community, and I guess the dramaturg and the director in me, after 23 years, you've pretty much told every story, and a lot of them you've told more than once. So when it kind of laid it all out, and when they did tell me the whole plot line of the story, my first thought, completely candidly, was, it's actually a terrific story. That's going to be it's going to be a great, shocking story. So, I felt less about my own personal mortality as the character because, first of all, nobody expected NCIS to be on the air for 23 seasons with a 24th season already, in promised to us. And I certainly didn't expect to play the role of Director Vance for 18 of those 23 seasons. I tell people this all the time, and I mean it in all sincerity. When I joined the show at the end of season 5, I thought I was getting in on the tail end of the series then. I thought, you know what, this will probably go 7 or 8 seasons. So at least I get in on the tail end of it. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking at 18 years ago. So by that math, by my own personal math, the last 16 or so years have all been a bonus for me. So I was, it's very easy to kind of have your own personal feelings about, oh my God, as much as you'd love to be one of the people who's still there when they board up the windows and the last episode is shot. It's been quite a run, and I was so proud of the episode. I'm so proud of the episode that we shot as well. So, there's too much good to be, to be depressed about it.
Speaking of the good, Adam Campbell returning as young Ducky. He is so good in that role. Just talk about filming that with him, and also just like how much it meant to Vance to have Ducky be there.
Yeah, and it personally was a first for me because a lot of people, people may not have really kind of put it together, but in all the episodes where Adam Campbell has come and played the role of young Ducky, it's always flashbacks as young as Gibbs. So this was the first time that I was actually in any scenes with Adam, even though he'd been in many other episodes of NCIS before. We never found a way because Vance was not a part of Gibbs's youth in that same way. So there were never any scenes between young Ducky and Vance. So this was the first time that these two characters were actually on screen together. So, also Nadir, who sort of is the character who we find out that, that Vance thinks he's talking to some interrogator when he actually is talking to the angel of death. So I had 2 great scene partners.
How much did Vance need to come to the realization of his death the way that Ducky laid it out for him as a case? Because that was so well done.
Yeah, and because it was sort of paying tribute to the fact that Vance was always, before he became director of NCIS, he was an investigator, and basically, what young Ducky, aka the Grim Reaper, is saying to him is, "I'm going to let you use your skills, your investigative skills, your powers of deduction and investigation to put together exactly what has happened to you, and you need to have this. You need to have this understanding of not only your own mortality and your own demise." But what you were able to accomplish before doing it. I think one of the most powerful things is that when toward the end, when Ducky says that, basically your life wasn't in vain. Look at all the things that happened, and the agency did survive, and these and the other agents did come back, and Parker did unretire. So there was so much good that you did, you know, although you're not there to see it, it all happened.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because like Vance wanted to build something that would outlast him, and he has like with this legacy. So like I was going to say, like, what does that mean to him? But also, what does that mean to you? Like to know that that is Vance's legacy.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of art imitating life in this episode here. When Steve Binder told me about what the plan was for the 500th episode, he was very emphatic about saying that he was writing the episode, and I think Steve is a terrific writer, and I know because we've had such a history. He was there when the character was introduced, even though the original episode where Vance was introduced was written by a writer by the name of Jesse Stern, who's no longer on our writing staff. Steve has been writing for this character for Vance for as long as I've been there, so he knows him very well. And he said, "I want this episode to be a love letter to your character," and I think that's kind of what it turned out to be.
Talk about filming the actual death scene with Gary, Sean, and Brian.
It's a little out of it's very surreal. Actors love doing death scenes. Actors love dying on camera. It took Marlon Brando 15 minutes to die in The Godfather. I mean, he's staggering around and he's fun. We love death scenes, but I think as you get older, and you start to sense your own mortality. And I've lost so many friends and um contemporaries and people who are close to me over the years. I was saying to a friend of mine, I said, I wish I was still living in a time where death was more of an abstract thought, because now it's very much, a real thing and very close to home. Um, so you can't help but sense your own mortality. You think about it, and you think about your legacy, and you think about hopefully the impact that you've had on people. But the great thing about dying on television is you get to come back for your own funeral. Basically, you get to have conversations like this, where people tell you basically what they feel about the character and how impactful it was. And in real life, I'd never have this aftermath.
And in the episode, he gets to see like everyone returning to the agency, everyone's still grieving also. And he has that moment also at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, you know in real life, you don't get to see the ripple effect of you not being there. So it is, creatively, the way it was laid out, and I think that with all the twists in it, and you nobody sees it coming. And I just think it just turned out to be a really good. It's one of my favorite NCIS episodes.
Yeah, but then like it's fun to go back and watch it because then you can see the little moments, like from the very beginning with the duck graffiti. It's
All the Easter eggs that are in there,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Um,
I was talking to another interviewer, and the first thing they said to me was, the first thing I wanted to do was go back and watch it again, because now it's like, oh, okay, now I see, you were leading me down this trail to begin with, yeah.
did you have any say in any of the moments in the montage at the end, or was there anything that you wanted included in that?
Well, before we shot the episode, because we talked about, I think once Steve put together what he wanted, how he wanted it to end, I did get a call. I did get a mess like, what are you some of the past episodes, and fortunate for me, I think they're close to 400 of them that I've been a part of. You're like, so we did actually do a little brainstorming, and I started rattling off, um titles of episodes. Some of the episodes I remembered by title, and then some of them I just had to say, that episode when this happened and that happened and that guy did. I said, because sometimes they go out of your head so fast. when you've had the good fortune of doing more than 300 episodes, you can't really call them all to mind as quickly as you'd like to. But yeah, we talked about some of the more significant episodes, and I feel like that sort of that montage that towards the end there. And I remember looking at watching that and I'm thinking to myself, man, I've been, this was a huge part of my life. I spent almost 2 decades as in this as this character. I was in my 40s when I started on this show. It's like it was a real experience, a great visceral experience. And I'm glad I'm able to do it at this stage in my life, that I'm not, that it didn't happen at the end of my life. It's the end of this character's life. But as far as for me as an actor, it's to have come full circle and completed this character and have spent close to 2 decades playing it. It's a great accomplishment.
And then to have Jackie greeting him at the end, that was so nice, that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all, everybody, whenever you lose somebody, a grandparent dies, and the first thing you say, well, they're together now. He's together, grandma and grandpa together again. First, we all feel that way. That when you hope that in the afterlife you're back with the people that you've already who've gone on before you. So, I think each one of us, anybody who's lost anybody, if it was a grandparent who had whose wife or husband died before, the first thing you say is, well, they're together now. So that's kind of that. But that to me was something that was just a reminder to the audience too, that Vance and Gibbs bonded over the same tragic. They both lost their wives tragically.
Will we see you again this season, like perhaps in flashbacks, or like what happened after Kate's death with Sasha appearing as the team processed her death?
Well, I don't think you've seen the last of Director Vance. I think we have, and I'm Meredith. I know you can attest to this. I think NCIS has coined the market in the ghost stars. People, returning, being and playing significant characters. We do more ghost stars than we do flashbacks. So, and also, we when we shot the episode, the last day of the episode was filmed December 11th. About a month later, I was back behind the camera directing another episode of NCIS. So my relationship, it wasn't. I knew the last day we shot this episode, and it was very emotional with the crew and the other people there. And I was saying to everybody, I was saying, hey guys, this is just goodbye for now. I'll be back. I'm like a visiting relative. I won't be here for every night for dinner, but I'll be here for all the holidays. So
I was going to ask if you're directing again because you do such a great job when you're behind the camera. So I'm
you
looking
know
forward
the
to that.
the first thing that they once when they told me what the plot line was, the 500th episode, it was followed up quickly with, you still want to direct, right? So I'm hoping that that's still going to be the case. So because I've been asked that by everybody at work as well.
So looking back on your time on NCIS, how will you remember it in Vance and what are you going to miss the most?
Oh, I'm going to look back on it with a lot of fun. I mean, I literally, um, if I may borrow a quote from Charles Barkley, who talks about his basketball career, I haven't had a job in 18 years. It's like I've been, for the last 18 years, I've done exactly what it was that I dreamt about as a kid, laying in the front yard of my house saying, this is what I want to do. So it's been a joy. And the thing I'll miss the most is the camaraderie. It's like what athletes say. I miss the group. You'll miss the guys. You miss being in the locker room. You miss you know, the things between takes and just the sort of the sense of camaraderie. We shoot NCIS on sound stages about 35 miles north of Hollywood. We're not on a lot. We're not on Paramount. We're not on Sony. We're not on a place where so we're kind of in our own little, little world. My running joke is, people say, where do you film NCIS? I said, well, we're in the witness protection program. We're about 35 miles north of Hollywood. So it's kind of been our own little universe, and I'll miss that more than anything.
How emotional was it for you to film this episode, especially like the ending with like Ducky? Because like it was emotional to watch it.
Well, and I think and the episode called for it. I think the emotion was it wasn't like, well, you're emotional, but you can't be that way for the episode. I think we just our Steve Binder has said it too. He and I both, after it was done, I said, we felt a lot of emotion in the room. I could feel with the crew behind, the guys behind the camera, everybody, while we were filming it. And you hope that a fraction of that actually translates, that makes it on the screen, that when people watch it, they can say, well, I can really feel it. So I felt like we accomplished that. I think the emotion was, it was emotional, even though people knew intellectually that, okay, he's still coming back. He's still coming back as a director. It's been 18 seasons, and like I said to everybody, if this had happened in my third season as director Vance, it would have been it would have been a much different feeling. But after 18, you know my characters lived two lifetimes basically, in TV world, and I said, for to play a character for 18 seasons on one of the most watched TV shows in the world is the equivalent to having lived to be 105. In my world, it's like, if you go to a memorial service for somebody who lived to be 105, your thought is, yeah, I'm sorry he's gone, but I mean, geez, he lived to be 105. So that's kind of how I feel about my character.
And then, like, what were some of your favorite scenes to film, like, over the entire course of the series? Like, which ones stand out to you looking back?
Wow, that's it's when you've got close to 400 or so to choose from. There's so many. I mean, my very first episode, just with the entire cast, the very first episode that was sort of centered around Vance, where you get to meet Vance and his wife and his family. Um, that It was called Knockout. It was directed by Tony Warmby, and it delved into a little bit into Vance's history, and Gibbs got to see Vance in his home life. It's kind of for the first time, and I felt like that was the first time where we started to make the transition from this character, sort of, who stepped in sort of as the boss from hell, to being a fully three-dimensional, fully developed character, and an integral part to the NCIS story.